They told him Africa was too dark, too dangerous, too broken. They told him one man could never change a continent. They told him miracles were over, that crowds that large were impossible, that revival like that would never happen again. But one quiet German boy ignored every warning and went on to preach to over 80 million people. This is not just the story of a preacher. This is the story of what happens when one man says yes to God. Reinhard Bonnke was not born into fame. He was not raised in wealth. He was not groomed to become a global icon. He was born in 1940 in a small town in Germany, into a simple Christian home where faith was real but life was ordinary. His father was a pastor, and from the outside his childhood looked peaceful and stable. But inside Reinhard, something unusual was stirring. Even as a boy, he felt an unexplainable pull toward God's work. While other children dreamed of becoming soldiers, pilots, or businessmen, Reinhard dreamed of preaching. He would stand alone in his room, holding a hairbrush like a microphone, pretending to speak to invisible crowds. He did not understand it then, but heaven was already shaping his destiny. His teenage years were not dramatic or rebellious. They were quiet, thoughtful, marked by a deep hunger for God. He read his Bible obsessively. He prayed for hours when others his age were chasing parties and pleasure. And yet, even with all that devotion, he had no clear idea what God would do with his life. Everything changed one day at a missionary conference. Reinhard sat in a crowded hall as speaker after speaker talked about unreached nations. Then one man began to speak about Africa, and he described villages that had never heard the gospel. He spoke of sickness, poverty, spiritual darkness, and people crying out for hope. As Reinhard listened, his heart began to burn. It was not emotional hype. It was not admiration. It was a calling. He later said it felt as if God had reached into his chest and set his soul on fire. He could not stop thinking about Africa. He could not stop praying about Africa. He could not stop dreaming about Africa. From that moment on, his life took a new direction. Reinhard enrolled in Bible school, preparing himself for ministry. While his classmates dreamed of comfortable churches in Europe, Reinhard's heart was fixed on a continent he had never seen. He studied theology, but more than that, he studied prayer. He fasted. He sought God relentlessly. He begged God to use him. Years passed. Still, nothing happened. Then, in 1967, with no fame, no financial backing, and no big ministry behind him, Reinhard packed his bags and obeyed the call that had burned inside him for years. He and his young wife Annie moved to Africa. They were assigned to Lesotho, a tiny mountainous kingdom in southern Africa. It was not glamorous. It was not exciting. It was not what he had imagined. They lived in poverty. They struggled with the language. They faced cultural barriers. They preached to empty churches. Some Sundays, only 5 people showed up. Some Sundays, no one came at all. Reinhard would stand behind the pulpit, staring at empty chairs, wondering if he had made the worst mistake of his life. He questioned himself. He questioned his calling. He even questioned God. There were nights he cried in frustration. There were mornings he felt completely forgotten. There were days he wanted to give up and go home. But something inside him would not let him quit. He kept preaching. He kept praying. He kept believing. And slowly, something began to change. A few people were healed during prayer meetings. A few more began attending church. Small breakthroughs began to happen, but Reinhard knew deep inside that this still was not the full vision God had given him. He felt trapped between what was happening and what he knew was possible. Then, in 1974, everything changed. Reinhard was praying alone when he received a vision that would define the rest of his life. He saw a map of Africa, and across it in massive bold letters were the words, "Africa shall be saved." He fell to his knees trembling. He wept uncontrollably. He knew this was not a motivational slogan. It was not a personal ambition. It was a divine command. From that moment on, his entire ministry shifted. He founded a new organization called Christ for All Nations. He stopped focusing on small church services and began planning massive open-air crusades. No church buildings, no polished stages, no comfort. Just open fields, massive sound systems, and one message: Jesus saves. His first large crusade was in Botswana. He expected thousands. Only a few hundred came. But Reinhard preached with fire. He prayed boldly for the sick. And then something incredible happened. People started getting healed. A blind man opened his eyes. A cripple stood up and walked. A woman with a tumor felt it disappear. The crowd gasped. Fear fell over the field. Joy exploded. Words spread like wildfire. From village to village, from city to city. The next crusade was bigger, then massive. Soon, Reinhard Bonnke was preaching to crowds of tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands, then over 1 million people at a single event. Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, South Africa, Zimbabwe, Zambia, Ethiopia, Uganda. People traveled for days just to attend his crusades. Some came on foot. Some sold their possessions. Some slept in the open air for nights. They came sick. They came broken. They came desperate. And God met them. Wheelchairs were abandoned. Crutches were thrown into piles. Tumors vanished. Demons were cast out. Blind eyes opened. Deaf ears heard. People screamed. People wept. People collapsed under the power of God. Entire cities were shaken. Reinhard became a household name across Africa. But fame never changed him. He still lived simply. He still prayed relentlessly. He still called himself a nobody. He would often say, "I am a nobody trying to tell everybody about somebody who can save anybody." But behind the scenes, the pressure was crushing. The travel schedule was brutal. The expectations were overwhelming. The spiritual warfare was intense. He faced death threats. He faced riots. He faced government opposition. In one crusade, an angry mob stormed the stage. In another, his tent was set on fire. In another, armed men tried to assassinate him. There were nights he slept with security guards surrounding his room. There were times he preached knowing someone in the crowd wanted him dead. Yet he never stopped. He never slowed down. He refused to retreat. His health, however, began to fail. Even the years of travel, stress, and exhaustion took a toll. In 2000, Reinhard suffered a severe stroke. He collapsed. He lost his speech. He was partially paralyzed. Doctors told him he would never preach again. They told him his ministry was over. They told him to prepare for retirement. But Reinhard refused to accept that. He prayed. He rested. He rehabilitated. Slowly, miraculously, he recovered. Against all medical predictions, he returned to the crusade field. Stronger, more focused, more fire-filled than ever. He preached until his final breath. In 2019, Reinhard Bonnke died. The world mourned. Africa wept. Leaders from nations paid tribute. Millions testified that their lives were changed because one man said yes to God. He was not perfect. He was not superhuman. He was simply obedient, and his obedience rewrote history. Because of Reinhard Bonnke, villages found hope, cities found revival, millions found salvation, and Africa will never be the same again. If God could use a quiet German boy, he can use you too. If this story stirred your faith, if it reminded you that obedience can change the world, take a moment to like this video. Subscribe to Graceful Guidance for more faith-filled stories, miracles, and testimonies. And share this message so someone else can be reminded that God is not finished with them yet. If this story stirred something in your heart, if it reminded you that God still uses ordinary people to do extraordinary things, then don't let this moment pass you by. Take a second to like this video so this message can reach someone who needs hope today. And subscribe to Graceful Guidance for more faith-filled stories, miracles, and testimonies that will strengthen your walk with God. And share this video with someone you love, someone who's tired, discouraged, or searching for direction. Because just like Reinhard Bonnke, your obedience, even in small things, can change a life. And remember this: God is not finished with you yet.